These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Okay, I just skimmed a brief portion of a Star Tribune column here that needs to be ranted about. But welcome into, usually it's Monday statements and questions here on Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd. Before we get into our statements and questions, Joe, why don't you tell the audience about MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air, if you could?
Absolutely. Well, because guess what, folks? MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air is there for you when you positively have to have them. And what's most important is this time of year, let's say that furnace starts to go and it starts to cough and wheeze. And you say, oh my God, it's wintertime. What are we going to do? We have to get this fixed. That's where my friends at MSP come to the rescue. As you can see right here, they fixed the problem. They are the place that you absolutely positively want to go to. And it's this simple. Just check out their site. Call MSP.com. Call MSP.com. Look, plumbing, heating, and air, they're not fun things, and they 100% aren't DIY things. They are things that you need professionals, and more importantly, trusted professionals, and that's what they're going to bring you. Again, call MSP.com to take care of any and all of those needs. And no, most importantly, it's going to be done right.
If I may, just opened up, and maybe you have the hard copy of this.
I was just
Suhan
getting this out for
here.
you to show you. Just a little show and tell.
Yeah.
My Star Tribune. Yeah.
Now, mind you, Glen Taylor owns the Star Tribune since 2014.
Oh boy. Gloves
So
are off.
any sort of opinion in favor of Glen Taylor could be tinted with the bias of him being your controlling owner of the company.
Well, this column right here. This column right here. There it is, your morning paper.
I think Dex strategically muted you while you rustled your newspaper.
I did it myself.
You did yourself? Okay.
Well, I wanted it effect at first, and then it's like, oh, okay, enough effect. Now we'll just get it back to C1, as they call it in the section.
So the article is, are the Timberwolves trading stability for excitement with this ownership changeover, where the news came down yesterday? I have also seen and heard from in just private text messages from people, the YouTube comments from our emergency episode of Flagrant Howls yesterday, and on social media, like probably 50 different people just anecdotally. Well, Glen Taylor did prevent the Timberwolves from moving the franchise back in the 90s. So, okay. Number one, on the stability angle. Well, 30 years of Glen Taylor ownership. They stayed in Minnesota. That's like, in terms of stability, they stayed in Minnesota. All right. So if that's the definition of stable, I guess, then cool. All right. Congratulations. Hang the banner. In fact, we should hang a banner. Glen Taylor kept the Timberwolves in Minnesota from 1994, a top 13 media market in the country, in a league that literally makes its billions off of TV revenue primarily. Thankfully, Glen Taylor was able to prevent the NBA from not having a team in one of the top 13 markets. But my question is, how long do we give someone a pass for keeping a team in a city? Now, if this was Buffalo, New York, or like a small-ass market that otherwise would not have a team, like if the NFL were to start from complete scratch right now, all right, let's put 32 teams in 32 markets. Buffalo, New York, and Green Bay, Wisconsin, without the history of those franchises for decades and decades, would not be like at all chosen, right? I mean, maybe you put a team in Milwaukee or something. But my first statement is, I am so sick of hearing, well, wait a second now, Glen Taylor prevented the Timberwolves from moving out of the state of Minnesota. Okay, so you know what? Keep the team for 20 more years until you're 105 years old. And by the way, in those 30 years, the Wolves have the fourth worst winning percentage in the NBA. They have the third fewest playoff wins in the NBA. They have probably the most embarrassing front office blunders. There's a whole long list of paying David Kahn, paying Joe Smith under the table, the whole blow up with Tom Thibodeau and Jimmy Butler, and the Rachel Nichols interview, the bungling of the Kevin Garnett relationship. Literally a list of 50 reasons why he's one of the worst owners in the history of the NBA, not named Donald Sterling. but he kept the team in Minnesota back in 1995 or 1996. So let's just give him a pass and let him continue to operate this thing incompetently. My God.
As sports dad, can I bring some sanity to this entire thing? Because I feel like it's like you're on the Taylor side of things. This is a terrible day. Who knows? Or you're on the Taylor stinks. I was an adult for the entire time that he owned this team, okay? I think what nobody's done yet is nobody's drawn the line of when it went sour. Glen Taylor did indeed. Now, just to be very clear, David Stern blocked the New Orleans move. A guy by the name of Bob Arum, who you probably heard of, a famous boxing promoter, was going to buy them. I believe he was seen a little bit shady, shocking from a boxing guy. And so David Stern is the one that said, you are not going to move a franchise that, by the way, again, is in a market that's good. And at that time was drawing. Like there was no credible, Marvin Harvard broke. And so they just panicked. Nobody in town was going to, at that time, step up. So Glen didn't, it's not like Glen went to Marv and Harv and said, give me the team. They were blocked. He eventually surfaced. That's awesome, okay? But more importantly, Glen Taylor early on brought McHale on board, who brought Flip on board. Glen Taylor actually forced by accident, 97 lockout because the Garnett contract was seen as such a, oh my God, what are we doing here? We got to control salaries thing. To me, through about 2004, there's a line drawn there where Glen's team was pretty damn functional. They improved. They made a ton of playoff runs. Wild like they got bounced in the first round a lot. They finally in 2004 went on the magical ride. After that, it's a disaster.
I think the line is drawn way before that. The Joe Smith under the table thing was like 1999 or 2000, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
that literally that took away 3 first-round picks in the middle of Kevin Garnett's prime.
Yeah, well, but part of the problem there is the entire thing. McHale there, Glen there. If you guys recall, it was actually KG that was adamant that they keep Joe Smith. I think 2004 is where you draw a hard line of success turns into, and yes, the bungled Joe Smith thing plays a role here. But let's go through. In 2005, then, they get off to a wonky start. McHale, who was the first guy to drag Glen down as well, because he went sideways. McHale went from being a very functional executive towards, I don't know what, but he fires Flip. Then that leads into we're going to trade KG, which, by the way, remember, KG's like, I don't want to be traded. And the Wolves are like, we're going to have to trade you. Like, that is a dysfunction at its highest level. And you have 14 years of no playoffs. So like, if you were to write the story of the Wolves, and Phil, I'm not saying that the bungled contract is not Glen's fault. So, but where
everything is Glen's fault.
But where you have the real dysfunction that starts the real problems is when McHale fires Flip and it leads into this disintegration. I mean, again, 14 years. So Glen deserves every bit of heat that he gets. But I feel like the conversation now has no nuance whatsoever. It's either Glen is just terrible or a big side of, no, Glen was great. So I feel that there's a history to be written here about this. And for some reason, people are like picking sides. You don't have to pick sides, folks. It's a conversation. And the conversation is...
I'll pick a side. He's one of the worst owners in the history of organized team sports. Period.
But nobody's talking about what transpired here. Like, he did buy the team. That was good. And 10 years after he bought the team...
He gets no credit for buying the team. And he gets very little credit for keeping the team in Minnesota. Because the NBA, especially, like, maybe they would have been gone for a couple
years. I got no
years.
problem with that.
The NBA wants teams in the top 15 markets. Like, let's stop giving him credit for that 30 years later.
But I'm
coming after you too now.
No, he also owned a team that drafted Garnett, and that was a ballsy move. What I'm saying is we don't seem to be having any rational discussions about what transpired. And from 2005 on, it's a gong show. It's a complete embarrassing gong show. He became he went from being a very credibly seen owner in this league to being a laughing stock. And unfortunately now there's no going back and saying, well, I hope at 83 he can change his ways. So I am all with, this is the best thing for the franchise, no question.
But here's what bothers me, and you just did it a couple times too. So I'm coming for you right now too. You're trying to build in nuance, and I'm not. I want a black and white discussion.
Well, but your whole adult life has been based on Glenn being a complete laughingstock.
But the more I think about it, it actually started twice in like 1998, 99, because the Stephon Marbury blowing up, and these are all things people are trying to paint some of the bad things that have happened over the last 30 years as well. Like, and we kind of did this with Doogie on the Scoop session. I'll throw him under the bus too, because, well, like when they brought in Tom Thibodeau, for instance, everybody thought, including us, that was universally a great hire. And they gave him way more power than he's had in other situations. And then 2 years later, the whole thing explodes with Tom Thibodeau behind the scenes and Jimmy Butler and the whole thing. But you know what? If you have a healthily engaged, commanding owner, you probably don't feel the need to desperately give all the power to Tom Thibodeau. Literally what happened was our franchise is in such a hole for a decade and a half. We are gonna overcommit to Tom Thibodeau and give him more power than anyone would ever give him because we reek of desperation stemming from the owner. So it's like everything. It's like, well, like, who would have thought the Tom Thibodeau thing would have blown up? Well, if you go back in retrospect, no self-respecting franchise gives someone that's not Greg Popovich that level of power. But if you want to go back to the late 90s, for instance, it is your job as an owner to create a culture. You're going to deal with egos. You're going to deal with all sorts of things in the NBA. And you have to hire the right people and yourself be able to manage massive egos. And the first part of the failed test was Stephon Marbury. Now, it's funny. I actually thought Terrell Brandon was a more effective player for the Timberwolves than Stephon Marbury. But he gets pissed about the contract. Okay, well, instead of all of us shrugging our shoulders and be like, what are you supposed to do? He's mad. Well, maybe if like an adult billionaire could come in and help smooth the waters, and then now we need a secondary star player because Marbury's gone. Well, Joe Smith used to be a number 1 overall pick, but we don't have enough cap space. Well, let's go. Like, all of these things compounded because of his inability to command a franchise. It's like for him, it was fun to own a team and make some money off of it. And, KG, I guess, okay, maybe we give credit because it was a risk at the time to draft a high school player. So congratulations, Glen Taylor Timberwolves 30 years ago for having that vision. That's awesome. And there's been a couple other good things along the way. But every time something bad happens, I feel like there's a contingent of people, and Suhan did it in his Star Tribune column here, and, I've fought Doogie on some of this stuff too and other people. Everything goes back to ownership. Like, if a player misses a free throw to lose a game, maybe that doesn't go back to ownership. But bad hires, chaos among players in front office, not knowing the landscape enough 15 years into your ownership to where you have to ask David Stern for a recommendation. That's how you wind up with David Kahn. Like, how do you not know the landscape after 15? Why are you hiring a search firm to discover Tom Thibodeau? So I'm just fired up about like the wave of sort of defense and revisionist history that, well, you give him some slack. He saved the Timberwolves from being moved. I don't want to hear it today.
Yeah, and there's this weird, and this happened with the Twins sale too, of when this hit of be careful what you wish for. I mean, people, this is 20 years of incompetence. This isn't like a bad 5-year run where you pit fell and you stumbled down the stairs a little bit. 20 years is a generation of fans and people. And that is enough of a sample size to outweigh any of the good you did prior if you were horrible currently for 20 years. The weird defense of be careful what you wish for, which is happening right now with the Twins, and now is happening with the Timberwolves sale, is baffling to me. Doesn't make any sense.
The Twins have won 2 playoff series since 1991.
Well,
the Timberwolves have advanced in the playoffs 2 years in the history of the franchise. Yeah. So it's like, what are we protecting? Oh, it's risky. It's not risky.
Yeah. Well, the poll ads in Glen right now get 0 grace. I'm just contextualizing the time.
There's no room for context.
I'm contextualizing the time. Sports Dad needs to look. I mean,
let me be.
You can be mad. there is a context to be discussed here. And yeah, I mean, everything Glenn did post 2005 for the most part is not good. Like, he didn't hire Conley. He was told to hire Conley by Mark and Alex. So yeah, there was a period of time there where it wasn't a complete disaster. Unfortunately, it became one for an extended period. Now, in Glenn's case, Glenn oversaw that entire thing. In the Polad's case, it's very cut and dry. Why? Like, Carl and his wife loved baseball. They actually cared. But by 2000, Carl said, you know what, contract the team. So he gets no grace for that.
Yeah. I think the best compliment I will give Glenn is the franchise has always operated at its best when he has identified a person or two throughout the history of his ownership that does know what they're doing, and he gets out of the way. So Flip Saunders for a period. Okay, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
Get out of the way. And then Flip again briefly before he tragically passed away.
Right.
Okay, Mark and Alex. We'll find out long term if they know what they're doing. But
Tim Conley,
you guys are going to go hire a president of basketball operations. Right. Get out of the way and let Vision Capital people, duo go find somebody.
Don't shoot the messenger. I am just providing some context for when you two were either young or, in Declan's case, not born.
Yeah. Well, Joe Smith. If Joe Smith's looking for another paycheck, maybe we can slide him something under the table.
Well, and he kept the documentation too. You got to burn that documentation. Yeah. That's the thing, is that documentation existed. They found it. Teams were doing that. Guess what they didn't do? They didn't keep it in their office drawer. So, hey, I got one. So it was mentioned very casually on the Super Bowl pregame show on Fox when Rams coach Sean McVay was part of the panel. And by the way, his contract's up in like 2 years. Someone's gonna come after that guy again with TV payola.
They make more money doing that than coaching.
It was mentioned very casually that on Saturday night in New Orleans, Sean McVay was partying with hanging out with his good friend Kevin O'Connell. If you don't think Cooper Kupp's name came up as they were sharing a few hurricanes, I don't know what you think took place.
What is that? Like, is that a shot?
It's a New Orleans drink.
Okay. It's a New Orleans drink that'll knock you on your ass before you know it. Oh, the hurricane? The hurricane is
it rum based?
I believe it is.
Yeah, I think it is. I have not
Snack
Shack.
I've not had one, but I know.
Snack Shack.
Oh, two types of rum. Is this it? Is it like kind of orange? Two types of rum.
Yeah. It's multicolored.
It's good in the summer. It's good in warm weather. Snack Shack has it locally in the North Loop. There's a hurricane there.
It ain't like they make on Bourbon Street, my good man.
They seem more like KOC and McVay seem more like your Mick Ultra guys. They're enjoying some Mick Ultras, which nothing wrong with that. Good for them.
And now there's like a Mick Ultra. There's like a lighter version of Mick Ultra even that has 30 calories.
Crazier.
And they're targeting old people, old active people.
KO Coach of the Year, 2 nights out, Super Bowls here. I could see him partaking in a few.
Probably 3 Michelob Ultras is the limit.
I think that's it.
I'll say this. I will not reveal my sources, but I have heard there have been some functions at which you would be surprised. KO, not necessarily a Michelob Ultra guy.
Oh, maybe a little
on the rocks.
I think
a
Kevin
block of ice and something brown.
Kevin's a former quarterback, man. He lives that life. But anyway, my statement is this: it's on.
Want whiskey.
It's on. There is no question. Now, does that mean that Cooper Kupp is going to be a Viking? Not necessarily. But, like, you talk about, like, the tampering, right? And the talks at the Combine and stuff. Forget the Combine. Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell hanging out on Bourbon Street on Saturday. It's brewing. And if the Vikings didn't have a quarterback to turn to, I think there would be a very, very compelling case to be made that they also talked about Matthew Stafford, who KO loves, but I don't think that they'll snoop around him.
We grabbed Cooper Kupp in our 2.0 Vikings offseason blueprint episode last week on Purple Daily.
We did.
Now that you guys have had a week to think on it, I'm a little more lukewarm on Cooper Kupp. I think it would have to be a drastically reduced, restructured contract.
Oh, yes.
I would be more comfortable if he was a number 3 receiver to Jordan Addison still being here for one more year. But also at the same time, if you're making the priority list, I don't even really want to talk about another receiver weapon, a perimeter guy. I want to talk about trenches. And so I know that this conversation is about what McVay and KOC may have been discussing, but I need the Vikings to be focused on offensive trenches, defensive trenches, and then if Cooper Kupp fits in at the end and you've got some leftover money, okay, cool.
Yeah, I agree completely. But let's play a game here. The reckless speculation game, which we play, which is great fun, versus the reckless speculation with a tinge of truth, okay? So I think it came out on Sunday as well that the Niners are going to trade or probably release Deebo Samuel. Well, Deebo Samuel is fun to talk about, but he's not coming here. Like he's not. He's not a fit. KO has never proven or shown that he has an inclination to use a guy like Shanahan used Deebo. Cooper Kupp, though, I got to think he's sniffing around. Because to your point, cheaper contract, because he's not getting his full payday here. Cheaper contract, released by the Rams. Let's go down this path. Knows every route inside out in those route trees.
Yeah.
And to your point, if you could get him on a number 3 contract, if he is going to fit in and he's not young and he's been hurt, I think Kevin O'Connell 100% intrigued there.
Yeah. Yep. I absolutely. If it works, there's some really interesting Kevin O'Connell connections. Just even in the exercise, the center from Coleman, right? The center from Chicago played with McVay and KOC. We brought him in as the starting center. Cooper Kupp. There's some dudes out there. All right. Before Dex shouts out a statement here, I guess I'll jump in with a statement about Pep's Legit Pizza. Well, the Mackeys threw in the pizza cooker last night. Pep's Legit Pizza, which you can find inside a grocery store frozen section near you, with that stone-baked cracker-thin crust, zesty tomato sauce. It's throwback style. It's pizza parlor vibes. And you got to, as you see on the YouTube channel, cut that thing into squares like a good Minnesota. Maybe put some crushed red pepper on top. We had the 3 cheese last night. The sausage and mushroom is probably my favorite. Pep's Legit Pizza. Have an authentic at-home pizza parlor experience.
My statement is this way. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
This way.
That way.
Curse is broken. The curse is broken. I wasn't able to get this in on NFL takes on Purple Daily, but finally, no team that has ever lost to Kirk Cousins in the regular season went on to win the Super Bowl.
Wow.
And the Philadelphia Eagles, who lost to Kirk on that, and I think it was a Monday night game, right? It was that epic. I think there was a fumble by Saquon or something happened where he didn't catch the ball. I think he had dropped the ball on a 4th down. That probably would have won the game, right? For Philly.
It was like right by the goal line. Yeah.
It was I think that was the Kirko. Was that the 500-yard game for Kirko too?
That was against Tampa.
Yeah.
That was against Tampa.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the game against Philly was in Philly, right?
Yeah, at Philly. 22-21 win for the Falcons. It was week 2. It was the second game of the season.
Oh, wow.
For them. But curse is broken. So no team that has ever lost to Cousins in the regular season went on to win the Super Bowl. But the Philadelphia Eagles have broken that curse. They lost to Kirk in the regular season, and then they took those mammoth trenches and just absolutely went after Patrick Mahomes. I saw this stat, speaking of the Super Bowl, and just how smothering that Eagles defense were. On Mahomes' final 8 plays in the first half, which were spread across 4 possessions, by the way, here's what happened. Mahomes took a sack on the first play, sack on the second play, pick 6 on the third play. Next possession, sack. Next possession, interception on your own 14th. Next possession, penalty, incomplete. In 8 plays, Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback of right now, and maybe, I know they've now put the bet of all time, but the best quarterback right now in the world, on those 8 plays, had minus 23 yards and 14 points off turnovers in 8 plays. Bang.
It's crazy.
It's nuts, man. So curse is broken. Bravo to the Eagles.
All right, I know this is kind of a hot take artist thing to bring up, but Mahomes' last 2 regular seasons have been statistically very much below the standard that he set in the first handful of seasons, regular season. But we've kind of said, yeah, they lost Tyreek Hill, and they're just like they're transitioning different weapons. They haven't really had a left tackle to rely upon. Now they got Joe Tooney, a veteran guard, playing left tackle. So they've got these inherent offensive holes. So we've kind of given him a pass on, his numbers have taken a dip in the regular season, but he's still Patrick Mahomes. He's still in there when you need a drive at the end of a game, and he rises up in the playoffs. But then he takes a generational ass kicking in a Super Bowl game. Tom Brady never took one like that in a Super Bowl, right? I guess my hot take question, if I may, do you think a little bit less of Patrick Mahomes than you did a year ago?
I think you would if you also, because the scheme is basically from the same thing, is the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. Because if you go back to that game, it wasn't this bad, but it was the same idea, which is we're going to pressure him, and he's going to, once he gets uncomfortable, it's weird because he scrambles a lot, but that Buccaneers game plan was exactly the same idea as Fangio used on Sunday. So I think if the Buccaneers game impacted your thinking about Patrick back then you probably dipped your opinion. For me personally, I mean, he's been so good so much.
Agreed.
It's not going to be like in 6 months, if I think of Patrick, this is not going to be like the game I think about. And it makes the rest of it go out the window.
I think I don't think less of him. No, I still think he can belong as the greatest of all time. Absolutely. But when you do look at the expected points added, so they put a graph out from the Tampa Bay game and the Super Bowl loss and the Eagles game. It is a drastically dip. Like the EPA for Mahomes was as low as -30 throughout the accumulation of that Eagles game. In the Bucs game, expected points added, EPA, that was only like in the -5. So like the bar graph, I don't have it on the YouTube screen. I'm looking at it right now. It was a much more smothering performance from Tampa Bay and a worse performance from Patrick in the Eagles game than compared to the Tampa Bay game.
Yeah. Just one more quick one for the road, because I know we got to run here. I just saw, Johnny K from The Athletic made an appearance on Kevin O'Connor's, I think he's with Yahoo now, his NBA podcast. And they're kind of outlining Kevin Durant and the Timberwolves potentially this summer. Doogie told us on the Scoop session today, straight up, that this is going to continue into the offseason. So one more question for you guys real quick, and we'll do more episodes on this later on Flagrant Howls. Do you think Kevin Durant is a Timberwolf next season?
I think
Go
he
ahead,
is.
Dex.
Yeah, I think yes. If the betting line was yes or no, I'm going to ride the yes. Yes.
Do I think he is? At the rate things are going, and because of how Ant loves him, yes. But we can do an episode on this. The more I think about it, I think the answer should be no.
I think the answer is yes as well. I think there's like momentum. Durant clearly wants out of Phoenix. Those guys love each other. The Wolves need a secondary scorer. In terms of how would you do it, I'd rather not give up Jaden McDaniels or Naz Reid. Anybody else to me is on the table. If you could leverage that Julius Randle opt-in $29 million to make up for a chunk of it, and maybe this is where I love me some Dante DiVincenzo, but if I get to keep Naz and Jaden McDaniels, and I'm getting Kevin Durant for a year or two, so finding a way to make it work and shoving out enough value in the trade.
That's what I was going to ask you. Where
feels
where
like it's
are
going to
you?
happen, though.
Where are you apron-wise if this happens?
Deeper dive for another episode, but you would be below the second apron,
okay,
because you would be shipping out, like Julius Randle comes off the books in that case. You probably don't bring back Nickeil Alexander-Walker for the $10 to $12 million he's going to make. So you can do it staying under the second apron. Absolutely.
Okay.
Just a little feeler.
I like it. No, I think it's definitely there's a path there.
Oh, it's a great talker, and it sounds like fun, but like responsible Judd again. Contact Judd, sports dad, is trying to really see this through very clear vision.
Yeah. All your vehement defense of Glen Taylor on this episode.
Go Glenn.
Okay. All right, there's your two. I think we're flip flopping our recordings here. This might be more of a Tuesday. We might double up on the Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd episodes here on Tuesdays. But your statements and questions here, and we'll see you for a write that down session tomorrow.